Back at it here on the Kaufman Corner podcast with you as always, the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, Soren Petro, Sports Radio 810 WHB with you as we talk Royals baseball. Just a housekeeping note, we'll have our draft preview. We're going to be joined by J.J. Cooper of Baseball America. Fantastic job. Of course, Baseball America, the iconic newspaper, would you call it? At least it was back in the day. About baseball, and J.J. Cooper's been fantastic when it comes to the scouting, the prospects, everything that goes into it. So we'll do that next week, make plans for that. This week, what have we learned about the Royals from the first half of the season? We'll talk about that, what are the things we need to learn, the Royals need to learn about this ball club, of course. Always the minor league minute coming your way here on the Kaufman Corner. We do it each and every week. It's time to roll with the Kaufman Corner.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more info. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis. It is the Kaufman Corner podcast, proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Make sure you tell them when you go if your business needs any kind of work with your parking lot or a brand new parking lot. Free consultations, no commissions, and no screws. You heard Curtis. GannAsphalt.com. Tell them you heard about them here on the Kaufman Corner. Rany, we thought that as we will go by the halfway mark between now and our next podcast, we would call this kind of the first half wrap up, and we would talk about what we have learned. Now, this isn't just like, joke time. Insert your own right here. There would be many that could be had. But what are some of the things that this organization needs to take away from this first half and apply in setting the course? Does that make sense? Like, it's an evaluation year. Half the year is there to be evaluated. What have you taken so that you now set on the right path of, oh, look, we're one player away. We get one guy. Let's go. We're a contender. Or, oh, no, we think we've still got work to do to, where your meltdown came not long ago. We got to completely retool this thing. And then where and how? How did you tackle the assignment for this week?
Well, the assignment was come up with things that we've figured out in the first half, and then also come up with a list of things that we want to learn in the second half. And, of course, the problem is that the second part of that project is far more extensive than the first part. In fact, I struggled to come up with a list of things that I'm confident that we have learned regarding the players on the active roster in the first half. I think the overwhelming takeaway of what have we learned in the first half, at least for me, and maybe people out there knew this, I did not. I regret that I did not. Is that this team is a hell of a lot farther away from anything remotely approaching contention than I thought, and that this is after into our sixth year now of a rebuild. This might as well be ground zero. It is ground zero, and that the organization has to approach everything they do going forward as if they had just been hired in 2006 into the carnage of the ghostly carnage, the ruins of a once great organization. The fact that they were the ones who presided over the decline and fall. Well, that's a separate issue. We're not going to get into that now. Let's just talk about going forward. But yeah, they're starting from scratch, and yes, there are pieces, unlike in 2006, I would say there are pieces on the Major League roster that might actually be parts of a contender in the future, but they're few and far between. And even those parts are far from finished products. So basically everything should be on the table in terms of transactions, in terms of trades. There should be no sacred cows. Anything can be moved. You're starting from scratch.
Yeah, that's what I had. Time to reboot was number one on my list. Is that it's clear that you're not just a couple of players away. You know, you thought Vinny Pasquantino was a guy that you could count on. Not necessarily. He's been off a little bit, but I think he's a hot streak away from being the guy you thought he was. Except for after being shut down for a handful of days last year with a shoulder injury, he's now going under major shoulder surgery. That's no longer a guy. If contract negotiations were going on and they were being held up, Vinny Pasquantino should fire his agent. You know, if they were trying to squeeze out a few extra pennies because, you know, it's not a pitcher with a shoulder injury, but it is still scary. And then Brady Singer has backed up the bus. And they continue, the rumblings are that they are continuing to argue over the same crap. But that is throwing a changeup. That is perfecting a changeup. And it's like a petulant child. And I think, to me, on the reboot, when you back those guys up, where I come even more on the reboot is, and we're different in the sense that you would start with the general manager. I view it as you gave him the job for a reason. It's too early to make the call on him. But I will tell you that he cannot spend this offseason just meeting with the same people. There have to be. David Lesky said it on my show from Inside the Crown, friend of the pod. You know, he said, you know, they don't necessarily have to fire someone. They can go out and add a bunch of people, but there have to be new people. I can't go. I can't stop there. There have to be changes. There have to be people that are out. Somebody has to be made accountable for all the misses. Whoever was
D's, I would say, like it's got to be multiple people. We tried the replace one guy in the front office. If you're not gonna start over from scratch, it has to be a massive teardown.
I understand that. You know, you gave a new leader gave new marching orders, but it's clear that a lot of these guys can't march, right? So they got to go.
A new skill set. Some people you can't develop skills that you've never developed in 15 or 20 years of being in a major league front office.
And I hate saying this, and I hate putting it on the man's plate because I know what it would mean if somebody came to me and said, "You got to fire your people," right? Because I think these are his friends, his colleagues, people he trusts and respects. He has to fire people. There's just, and I don't have a set number. It can't quietly be a guy, someone you didn't know unless you flip through the media guide. There's going to have to be significant change in the front office. I am all for adding more, but there's just no way that you can be this far into the second time with this kind of problems and not come to the conclusion that there are certain people that have not gotten it done.
Right. And adding, I mean, you get into a situation, if you add, you don't subtract, you end up with too many cooks in the kitchen. I mean, and during the Allard Baird era, the Royals didn't lack for employees. If anything, you talk to people in the organization then, it was bloated. They had too many people collecting paychecks that didn't really have a clear responsibility, didn't have clearly defined goals, and didn't have clearly defined skills. So if you bring in people and they're just going to have, because let's say you bring in a new voice, well, is JJ going to listen to the new guy or to the guy who's been his friend for 15 years that he's been through the wars with, that he's won a championship with? Like you have to subtract voices in order to let the new voices be heard. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why I have become so skeptical that JJ can do it. It's not anything personal against him, but it's like you said, it's hard to make those really difficult decisions precisely because this front office has been so stable for so long, and tell people you've grown up with that you've got to go. Yeah. But if he can do it, then he's gonna have a far greater chance of being successful in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. And so the reboot is here. And I think that needs to be the mindset as we head into the trade deadline, as you head into the offseason. And I like the way you put it, no sacred cows. I mean, if you can get some kind of deal that, I don't envision the trade that involves Bobby Witt Jr. I just, we can, I will say that literally no one is off the table. I just don't know what a team would give you, that would make that work. But if there is a scenario where for some reason there is, then you have to listen to it because I don't think there is enough of a framework. I will say this. I'll go with number 2 on my list. Bobby Witt Jr. can be a shortstop. I mean, I think we've seen that giving him that spot, letting him stay there has been effective, and maybe let that be a lesson. I mean, the thing that I won't say I've learned, but I've confirmed is that your ball club at the big league level should be coming together as these guys are going through the minor leagues. The pieces should be put into the place that they're going to go. I don't know. Think of it as a bank tube. It goes in the one that's going to slot 4, right? Shortstop. Right. And I funnel it there. And if something is going to block the tube, either that has got to be traded or what's blocking has got to be traded, i.e. MJ Melendez is our catcher of the future. Salvador Perez goes before he gets to 10-5 because we have to make this thing work. Or Salvador Perez is our catcher of the now and the future. MJ Melendez has value. He just won a home run title as a catcher. He has to be traded right now. His value will never be more. I think this team has proven that the idea of, my fear of MJ Melendez running around, he's not Billy Butler playing left field, but there's just no reason for this to be going on. I mean, it has not been successful in trying to put your first baseman in the left field, although Prado has played surprisingly well. I will admit that out there. I don't know I haven't looked at his defensive metrics, but I know he at least looks the part more so sometimes than MJ Melendez. But even MJ Melendez has shown some athletic moments, catching balls at the wall. But it's just, that switch should have been made with an eye towards an A ball that this guy can really hit, and he's not moving Salvi, and we need his bat. And so he's going to right field. The whole, just make it fit at the big league level has not worked yet again and cannot be allowed to be part of the process moving forward.
Yep. Everything you said, 100%. I was going to say, no, MJ Melendez is not Billy Butler in left field because the Royals already have Billy Butler in left field. His name is Edward Olivares. And, I mean, this is a bit of a tangent, but, I mean, Edward Olivares, as a Royal now, in his Royals career, his OPS plus is 102. So he is slightly above major league average hitter since joining the Royals, in basically a full season's worth of at bats. 168 games, 568 plate appearances. He's got a 734 OPS, 102 OPS plus, right? What do you think his overall value is in terms of wins above replacement?
Negative.
That's what I wanted to hear. Yes, negative. It's negative 0.3. It's
right.
He's below, despite being a league average, slightly above a league average hitter. His defense is so horrific. For his Royals career, he's at negative 18 for a full season. This year, he's 10 runs below average. He's only started 41 games in the outfield. He does DH sometimes. And this is not a question of, this doesn't match the eye test. I don't know where these numbers are coming from. No, I know exactly where these numbers are coming from because I've seen him play left field or try to play left field, and it's very Billy Butler-esque. So this is, Edward Olivares may or may not be any part of a future solution here, but from the standpoint of an organization that is making smart decisions is going to get that guy out of the field. He is strictly a DH. Maybe he can play first base, but he's strictly a DH on this team. And yeah, it's going to be difficult because you need place for Salvador Perez when he's not catching. And obviously Vinny Pasquantino and Nick Prado there, but with Pasquantino out, you've got to start focusing these guys on the things they can possibly do and avoid the things they can't do. He can't play defense. Letting him play defense is hurting the team. It's hurting your pitching, probably hurting his development. Right? I mean, leaving MJ Melendez, to play two different positions for the better part of 2 years has not just hurt him defensively. He hasn't developed his bat. So start acknowledging the obvious is something the Royals are really, really bad at. Edward Olivares has value. Maybe his only value is literally as a pincher off the bench. You know what? That's fine. You need guys off the bench. Having a one good pinch hitter on your bench is actually something most major league teams don't have in this modern era because you have 7 relievers, 8 relievers, 9 relievers, and 4 bench guys. So if all he is a bench guy, fine. Stop playing him in left field. That's a separate issue.
Yeah, and I will say, on the Olivares, whoever scouted Olivares, right, if he's still in the organization, when they made the trade for him, if the report was that he can play left field, that guy has to be fired. I know, I'm serious because their whole whoever gives the reports on the defensive ability of the Royals, he needs to be fired. because all the word or I don't know, the whoever leaks it out that these guys are good defenders, bravo, I guess. I guess you're doing the job of trying to sell people on these guys. But, if you acquired a guy at the centerpiece of a trade and the idea was that, okay, this is the guy we're getting, then, and you failed it, you got to go. I can't stress. Now, if it was like, look, no glove, we're going to have to he's Rusty Kuntz's project. We're going to have to teach him to play outfield, but he's going to hit and he's going to be a solid hitter. Okay. Then that's a fair evaluation, but they have to start getting more accurate. If they thought this guy was going to be a legit a major league outfielder and they were sold that by whoever was in charge of scouting him, then that guy's got to go.
I would agree, but my caveat with that would be based on what we've seen from the Royals for pretty much the last 15 years, it feels to me more like a situation where the scout may very, very well have said this guy's rough defensively, but the bat will play, and that's a fairly accurate assessment. But that the Royals as an organization, whether that's the people higher up or just the culture they've installed, has substituted hope for a strategy, right? That this idea, well, we'll make it work. Hope and denial are not something that you're getting at the scouting level. That's something you're getting higher up. And we've seen so many instances over the years where the Royals were just kind of ignore a problem or just assume that problem will fix itself. Brady single will learn a third pitch, and if you don't actually put in the time and effort to make it happen, it won't happen. Or if you won't acknowledge that it'll never happen, then you will keep making the same mistake over and over again. So I almost worry that that's more than just that scout screwed up problem. It's more of this is an organizational culture problem.
Yeah. No,
so that's, whatever it is though, that is the thing. JJ Picollo, if he's going to stick around and have any success at all, he has to fix that. So my second thing is similar to your point about Bobby Witt. I didn't quite put Bobby Witt on my list just because it's been a half season. I want to see a full year and see the numbers stay there. But yes, he's definitely changed my mind about his potential ability to be a shortstop. And I would be very happy to be wrong that he cannot play the position, at an above average level. So, but going hand in hand with that, the thing that I have learned, which is a positive development, is that I think Maikel Garcia is a player. All right.
Okay.
Maikel Garcia has handled himself offensively, as well as you can expect for a guy who doesn't have a lot of power. He's hit 2 home runs now this year in 44 games, and yet he's got a 389 slugging average, and he's an above average hitter, and he's an elite defensive third baseman, right? Which, I mean, he should be, because he's supposed to be a good defensive shortstop. But for once, the numbers corroborate. Yeah, this is a shortstop, a good shortstop playing third base. And having 2 good shortstops playing in your infield is a good thing. A lot of teams have, a lot of the success of a lot of teams stems from having, players who are overqualified for their positions defensively because they just have so much talent. They can't play 2 shortstops, so they just put someone, at a lesser position. So now, the fact that Maikel Garcia is a player is not mutually exclusive from the idea that Maikel Garcia could be a trade chip, right? In fact, you want to be creative. Maikel Garcia is a very interesting commodity. It certainly allows you to go the nuclear option and trade Bobby Witt Jr. if the right trade arrives. You have a replacement. But the point is, he was one of the few prospects in the system coming into the season that actually seems to have taken a step forward. And I actually think has a future as an everyday player on a contender, in whenever the Royals are ready to contend. Assuming that's not 30 years from now when he's 50 years old.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think that's a great point. You're convinced on him, but not convinced on Bobby Witt.
No, I'm convinced Bobby Witt's a player. I don't know if Bobby Witt is still best being a shortstop. You know what I mean?
Garcia, you are convinced can play shortstop based off what you've seen in this time of third. I just want to make sure
I'm saying my point is less about Garcia being a shortstop. It's more just Garcia is a major league player, right? Okay. He can play a position. I think right now, Witt at short and Garcia at third, I'm completely fine with that. If the season goes along and we see that Witt his defensive numbers start to tail off, or he starts to become error prone again or whatever, I'm comfortable with the option that you can always move Garcia to shortstop and move Witt to center field or third, whatever we've talked about before. But to me right now, that is not on the table. My only concern with leaving Garcia at third base is, are you leaving value on the table because he's not a shortstop? In which case, does he have more value to another team? Because if you can go to another team and say, look, we have Michael Garcia, we don't have a place for him at shortstop, but we know, and you've got the defensive metrics, he can be a good defensive shortstop and hit the way he's hitting. Give us your, an elite center field prospect or a potential number one starter or whatever in your farm system for this guy. There may be a way to make that work. Like after what the Royals have done with MJ Melendez, I really do not want to see them leave value on the table by putting a player in a position that's not where he's giving you the most value, if you can get that somewhere else.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I love the idea of having a truly elite defensive third baseman, having suffered through the Hunter Dozier years for so long. I'm completely fine with a guy who maybe is. I mean, the best defensive third baseman in the sport right now is Ke'Bryan Hayes in Pittsburgh, who's not a great hitter, but is just such a ridiculous defensive third baseman that it doesn't matter. And the Pirates are, on schedule for their rebuild. So I'm completely fine with having an overqualified guy at third base. I'm just saying that JJ should be listening to every trade possibility out there. And if somebody's willing to give you really good value for Michael Garcia, you should be listening.
All right. I'll go next with another one. The 2018 pitching class. Spare me. This is, again, is somewhat of a C. Number one, Coar is getting bombed. Singer, there's either no ability to connect with the man to get to teach him to pitch. No one who knows how to teach someone to pitch. Daniel Lynch, even when he's good, can only strike out two guys in an era where strikeouts are readily available. Guys are willing to take a mighty cut even when they're behind in the count. I don't know what, I mean, to me, that's like the most frustrating part is, like, at a time where they drafted exactly the opposite of how you should go about doing it, right? Position players. Jeff Passan said it this week. I said, the Reds and Pirates, he said, they all invested in position players. And the Royals went another route. They went pitching. And Asa Lacy is gone, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know where he is on the planet. I wish him well. It's too bad it didn't work out. But that in the 18 class, like, it's massive. They began the overhaul, but it's not at the big league level. It's clearly at the seed. And so the pitching overall, the 18 class, I now think of is just steps behind Asa Lacy. Congratulations. They're going to log some big league innings, but I have very little hope for any of them. And that includes Brady Singer. I think it's going to be a battle, at least in this organization. And when people say, well, if you trade him now, you're selling low, it's never going to be high with him in this organization, as I see it.
So I'm actually going to push back a little bit on this one. And I say this as somebody who, like, in the days before the 2018 draft, wrote a column for The Athletic about what the Royals draft strategy should be. And the headline on the article was, the Royals, whatever they do, should avoid drafting pitchers. And then they went out and drafted college pitcher after college pitcher after college pitcher. And yet I look at the 2018 draft, and I'm not willing to say this is a complete disaster yet, for two reasons. One is, the reality is of any draft, and certainly drafting pitching in general, is there is so much risk, there is so much bust potential, that even what the Royals have gotten so far is actually far from the worst case scenario. Like, these guys have at least gotten to the major leagues, and yeah, they've been incredibly frustrating, but Brady Singer had one good year. One good year is better than, like, a hell of a lot of first round picks will give you. It's not like they were drafting in the top 10 either. I mean, they had the 18th pick in the draft, the 30th and 31st picks in the draft, I believe, and then Bubic was like 40th. And then Jonathan Bullen was the second round, like late 50s. Like, they had two extra draft picks because of Eric Hosmer and Lorenzo Cain being free agents, signing elsewhere. But beyond that, they didn't have, they didn't draft in the top 15. So I don't think they wasted an enormous opportunity. The Asa Lacy thing, drafting fourth, is a completely different kettle of fish. And so there's that part of it. There is other, stuff in that draft. I mean, I still don't know what Kyle Isbell is. 6 weeks ago, we wouldn't have even mentioned the guy that the Royals drafted in the 5th round. That's Austin Cox. Austin Cox is in the major leagues in the bullpen because, you know what? Sometimes you take a guy who can't start, and Austin Cox in the minor leagues was a starter and not very effective as a AAA starter. Move to the bullpen. I'm not sure he's for real, but I mean, 12 and a third innings. The 2 hits gets all the attention. I mean, he went longer without giving up a hit than basically any pitcher in Major League history, but 13 strikeouts out of 42 batters. That's a 30% strikeout rate. That's what catches my eye. Maybe Austin Cox is something. It's a disappointing draft at this point. It may be a below average draft. I don't know if it's a disaster draft. It's not the reason why the Royals are where they are. You look at all the drafts around them. And then the other thing is, I actually still think Daniel Lynch might have some upside. I still want to see what Chris Bubich does when he gets back. Sometimes it takes pitchers, even college guys, 5 or 6 years to figure out what they really are. It's very frustrating. I do want us to pinpoint something with Brady Singer, though, which is what is so frustrating. Here's Brady Singer's percentage of his pitches that are changeups year by year. Okay? Starting with his rookie year. His rookie year, 4.7%. 3.9%. Last year, his good year, 7.7%. Still, look, you need to use your third pitch at least 10% of the time. Okay, but 7.7%, he was successful, about as successful as you can be throwing 2 pitches 93% of the time. This year it's down to 5.7%. Where in the communication path between the Royals front office, Matt Quatrero, Brian Sweeney, and Brady Singer did the message get garbled that, as a result of you throwing your changeup almost twice as often last year as you did the 2 years before, you had your best season. For the first time, you were an above average Major League starter. The solution clearly then is to throw it less. All right. So I don't know if it's on them or it's on him. I'm assuming it's on him and his stubbornness, but that's their job to get the most out of him. He's throwing his changeup less, and he's been terrible this year, and he's not adjusting. That is a development issue, which is almost more scary than a talent issue.
But let me shove back at your pushback, and say this: he is a month away from being 27 years old. Okay, like, when is this going to happen? Right? If at 27 years old and hoisting a career ERA of 4.43, which is not, I mean, he's the shining star of the 18 class, but there's nothing to write home about, right? And you are not open, you are not wanting change, then you do not have the inquisitive mind that great pitchers have. Well, what if I do this? How about if I do this? This guy does this. How do you do that? And out there and tinkering and firing things away, creating new pitches, new grips, different things like that. He apparently does not have that interest, which is a scouting issue, right? I don't care which one we want to land on, scouting or development, but he has been much more of what, the word was on him coming out of college, than has been reality. And that is, he profiles out as a reliever. He doesn't have the weapon, and he's not interested in really developing it, perfecting it. I'm hearing that he's still fighting about not wanting to throw it. He still, says, well, if the other two aren't good, then this one won't be good. I mean, just the basic fundamentals of pitching, he is not in line with. So why would you draft him even as high as you did? There is a reason why he slid to where he slid.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, what's so frustrating is when you say, when is this going to happen? I thought it happened last year. That's what's so frustrating. I thought it already did happen. And you say, the natural inquisitiveness, or the willingness to change, or to assume that even if you are successful, that you are not going to continue to be successful unless you continue to adapt. Well, I mean, it's not like, he doesn't have a teammate who literally is going to go into the Hall of Fame despite throwing 90 miles an hour on a good day now, and is still more effective than him because he's willing to throw a 61 mile an hour curveball and throw a changeup and a fastball that literally are at the same velocity. Like, Zach Greinke's in the clubhouse. What the hell? Like, what more can the Royals do in terms of giving you a role model for Brady Singer than to have Zach Greinke as your teammate who, is matching you pitch for pitch, not in necessarily a good way, but it's certainly not worse than Singer this year, despite having a fraction of the stuff. So, yes, there is it's on Singer, the sense of his stubbornness. I think you make a good point that it's not like his personality was a mystery. I mean, his personality can be framed as a good or a bad thing. And that's the thing. The Royals looked at his mentality in college and like, oh, he's a bulldog, right? He's a bulldog. He won't give in. The problem is, it's not just about giving in to the hitter. Sometimes you have to give in to your own ego. Sometimes you have to give in to reality.
Well,
And
that's
if you're not willing to do that, that's what's happening now. Is he's so hard on trying to prove a point about the way he pitches that he's, it's not about beating the batter in the batter's box. It's about beating his own limitations, and he's refusing to do that.
yeah, and that's the frustrating aspect of things, is that he won't turn the corner. I'll give you my last thing, and you can have the last word on the 18 class. My point about him being a month away from being 27 years old is Curtis ran the numbers on guys at 150 strikeout seasons. Like, we went back, I think 20 some odd years, and what age were they for every pitcher that had it? So I give, somebody had 200 strikeouts 7 years in a row, they would be one on each one of this, right? And it ramps up to 27 years old, and then it ramps down after 27 years old. That is the pitching peak, based upon, if you consider the strikeout to be the ultimate, accomplishment for the pitcher. He's a month away from his peak, and you haven't got his head right on how to pitch. Daniel Lynch is about ready to start eroding physically. Daniel Lynch is only he is 26 and 220. He'll be 27 in November. So next year will be his 27-year-old season. Yet he is yet to figure it out. Chris Bubich won't be back from surgery until he's almost 27. So they haven't figured it out, and now they're going to be physically declining. That's a terrible recipe. And it's one that says to me that, again, I come back to, well, you don't want to trade anybody now because you'd be trading low. Wrong. All, in my opinion, that happens with each one of these guys every day that they're on the Royals is they get closer to being nothing. Like, there is no upside to be had. And if I'm wrong, maybe one of them. And if you get a little something, or you can throw them into deals that get you a valuable piece with something else, in the end, the Royals, if they do it with every one of them, they will be a better ball club for having done it than not done it. That's my last say.
Okay. The only pushback I'll give you there is, if you get rid of them, who are you replacing them with? And the reality is, right now,
are you saying to me, if not him, then who? Are you throwing my own line back at me?
Of course I am. I learned from watching you, Dad. I learned from watching you.
And I learned from you. We just go into free agency and splash money around, Randy.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Let's throw out more 2-year, $17 million contracts. That'll solve the problem. So, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. But right now, if I thought the Royals had better options than Brady Singer or Daniel Lynch in the rotation right now, I'd be willing to listen. Right now, I actually think if I had to, God forbid, gun to my head, I had to pick one pitcher in the Royals organization to start a game, do or die, that they had to win, it might be Daniel Lynch at this point. Like right now, I mean, who would you trust? I mean, Zach Greinke is eroding a little bit physically. He had some, he had some very pointed remarks about his own performance in his last start. His incredible honesty and candor was just a tiny bit depressing when he was basically like, yeah, I don't have the stuff I used to after giving up 7 runs in 4 1/3. And I still, with everything else he does, his command and everything, I still want Zach Greinke on the mound every 5th day. But if I had to pick a guy, it'd probably be Daniel Lynch. So I'm not trading that guy if I don't have somebody to replace him. Brady Singer is on my list, very high on my list of things we need to figure out in the second half. Let's talk about that, because that's a much longer list. We haven't gotten to that.
Well, do you have any more that we have learned? Because I've got one more if you want.
Well, the only other thing I was going to throw out there, just in what we've learned, it's really vague, but it's like that the Royals are, at least in the minor league level, trying new ideas with pitcher development. I'm not even saying that it's working, but they're at least trying. You are seeing their pitchers throwing a lot more up in the zone. They care a hell of a lot more about spin rate on fastballs to get more loft, right? And that was the thing that they were like as far behind the curve as any team in baseball in terms of what they valued in fastballs, and not valuing having fastballs that rise relative to gravity, to pair with all the pitches, all your breaking balls that go down, that you need to have as they say, change the batter's eye level. That you need to have the fastball that rises to pair with the sinker that goes down and all the other pitches. They are doing that now at the minor league level. We are seeing a lot more strikeouts. Whether or not that is enough to make it work, I don't know, but at least they're trying something new.
And I would add to that and say, many years ago, I told the story on the radio on A10 this week. Many years ago, I talked to Joe Ryan when he was his first tenure as the general manager of the Minnesota Twins. And I said, listen, all your guys throw strikes. Like, what is the key? How do you do it? He said, you don't move up in our organization unless you throw strikes. And so whenever Frank Mazzucato comes back, I would hope that the reason he is still where he's at, the strikeouts say promote him. The walks say he's not ready. I think at some point that philosophy needs to be instituted. And I think the best place to do it is in low A ball. You will not move forward in this organization unless you throw strikes.
I wonder if that's why he was not promoted, even though he was dominating.
I'm hoping
low A ball before the injury. He is back actually, and his first two starts, and he just made a second one. His control was off, which he missed 2 weeks. It was a small injury, so but he hasn't been promoted yet. And I thought a month ago before his injury, I thought he'd be promoted soon. If, like you said, that's what they want to see from him, great. Because I agree. I think with a young lefty like him, with the kind of curveball he has, when it comes together, it can come together really quickly. But there's really no rush in a way. Yeah, you'd like to be able to have that feather in your cap that our first round pick has been promoted. But you know what? If he's still 19 years old or just turning 20, it's okay to force him to go a couple of starts with only walking one or two batters before he gets promoted, because stop trying to win in the here and now. You have to have a 5-year window now, and that means making decisions that are going to slow down a guy's progress. If it means 2 years from now, 3 years from now, he's a better pitcher than he would have been otherwise.
By the way, we're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, serving the entire greater KC metro area. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems go away when you know Gann. They've been serving Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and a written warranty on every project. You can find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Make sure you tell them you heard about them here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Rany, now all things we need to learn in the second half.
So the obvious is on the pitching side. I want to see the second half of the season. Daniel Lynch and Brady Singer take the ball every fifth day. We need to figure out, are these guys capable of being major league starters? And it's a different for each one, because Daniel Lynch has never had the success Singer has had in the past, but also doesn't have his limitations in terms of repertoire. Lynch, I think he needs to take a step forward, but I think he can't. Singer needs to figure out what he was doing right last year and stop being stubborn and going back to it and developing on that, right? But the point is, both of them, if only one of them works out, fine. We need to figure out which one of these guys can be a major league starter for next season. That is enormous. If both of them, great. But if neither one, we need to find that out between now and October.
I agree wholeheartedly. No matter what happens, they take the ball every fifth day as a starting pitcher the rest of the way. I'm in complete agreement about that. All right, I will go with this. Do the Royals have a center fielder? Mm-hmm. That has to be figured out. Drew Waters, Kyle Isbell, who is going to be the center fielder for this team? Do they have one? Because if not, then that needs to be a priority. If you're going to be a pitching and defense team, which I'll even maybe we'll snake it this one, I'll throw out another one, and that is get a real lineup out there. Get real defense out there. I believe Matt Quatrero wants to pitch it and catch it. They preach pitching it. To pitch it, you have to catch it, right? And they're not good enough at that. So they've got to figure out the best defensive team they can, and that comes with making center field a priority. Either Drew Waters is the guy or he's not, and where does he fit if not there? And then where do you get a center fielder? And they need to start putting more of a priority on that. They're developing. The best kept secret about this ball club is their inability to develop an outfielder. Most teams have multiple, center fielders that can really go get it, but can't hit, right? Or, the Royals, when was the last outfielder they developed? It's David DeJesus. I mean, can you name one?
Yeah. I mean, Gerard Dyson, I guess. But
Did you call him an
he,
everyday outfielder?
he was the best fourth outfielder in the game, but yeah, he's kind of a special case. He was just a speed dude. And then of course Alex Gordon was a third baseman that they converted, right? So like a guy they drafted, developed to be an everyday guy. Yeah, probably DeJesus.
I mean, yeah, that they said this is we identified an outfielder, we developed an outfielder, and then he played outfield. The last guy is David DeJesus. The last guy before that is Carlos Beltran.
Yeah.
A guy who's Hall of Fame eligible. And is like, that's a real question. Should he go not like, oh, well, the guy played 3 years, he's been out 5.
No. He had a Hall of Fame career, retired. Yeah. It's been 5 years.
Yes.
Yeah. No. It's been a very long time. And for an organization that prides itself on outfield, its history of outfield, has a huge outfield, it's having, and frankly, to their credit, has not let that has not limited them from having an incredible defensive outfield that won a World Series, because they went out and got Lorenzo Cain and they converted Alex Gordon. But they didn't do that through, like you said, identifying, drafting, and developing. And also a team that has spent a ton of money in Latin America on outfielders over the years that have not panned out, from Ciuli Matias to Eric Pena. Like they it's not for lack of resources. So in general, what you're describing, yes, I think it's great. I specifically, to me, like high on my list is just, we need to find out what Drew Waters is. I mean, even last week I was saying, he's been a huge disappointment. He's had a really good weekend in Tampa Bay, and his numbers are up a little bit now. The issue I have, and I'm going to lump him in with Nick Prado, because he's actually, those are the two guys that I feel like I really want to see in the second half, because their careers could still go either way. Nick Prado's had a really good year in terms of his offensive numbers. His OBP is way up. If this is the hitter he is, a 356 OBP, 425 slug, not a great player, but you can play that at first base if he's got good defense and he's an average to above average player. But here's the thing: even with his improvement offensively, his strikeout rate. So his strikeout rate as a rookie last year was 36%. This year, it's 35%. Drew Waters last year, 100 plate appearances, not even a full rookie season, 35% this year, 37%. This year, 36%. Like both of them, their strikeout rates have improved by the tiniest amount. Still way too high. It is very, very difficult to survive in the major leagues with a strikeout rate above 1/3. To give you an example, Joey Gallo, the most extreme hitter of this extreme generation, his career strikeout rate is, I think, 37.5%. And Joey Gallo, despite the fact that he hits the ball over the wall a ton, because the way to compensate for strikeouts, the reason why you can't be a great hitter if you strike out so much is because you only have so much control over your batting average on balls in play. But if you hit the ball over the fence, that doesn't qualify as a ball in play. So if you hit it theoretically, if you hit it for enough power, you can strike out half the time. Doesn't matter. But even Joey Gallo, who hits a home run as much as anybody, has been very limited as a player overall because of his strikeout rate. Right, 37.5%. That is the absolute, like the Mendoza line of strikeouts, and you've got to compensate with massive power. Nick Prado doesn't have massive power. Certainly has not in the major leagues. He had the great minor league season. He has 5 home runs this year. If he's going to survive, he has to bring that strikeout rate down to 30%. Drew Waters, same thing. 30% is where it needs to be at the absolute maximum. By comparison, Bobby Witt Jr., who his strikeout rate was 23% in his one minor league season, which not bad, but I was concerned it would go up when he got to the major leagues. Last year, his strikeout rate was 21%, and this year, Bobby Witt is at even 20. That is the primary reason why I am much more optimistic about Bobby Witt right now than those other guys. But 20% strikeout rate, the major league average is around 22, 23%. So if you're striking out 20% and you're hitting for power like Bobby Witt does, yeah, he needs to swing at fewer pitches outside the zone, et cetera. He still has stuff to work on, but the building blocks are there. I'm not sure Drew Waters and Nick Prado can make contact enough to survive and be successful major leaguers. That is the thing. Even more than their actual performance, their strikeout rates in the second half are what I'm going to be looking at to say, are these guys a potential solution for the future?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And, we're watching Prado's numbers kind of erode in front of us. They were so great when he first came up, and I'm still optimistic. I still do like the fact, I think he's got to find a balance between when he swings, when he's taking, because it's a bad pitch and when he's taking to
Right.
take.
In his case, I mean, I think he by far leads the team in called third strikes. I think he's up
Yes.
to like 18 of them, which, I mean, he obviously needs to work on that, but I feel like that's a simpler solution than swinging at pitches that you can't hit. And yeah, we knew his strikeout rate was, or his performance was unsustainable when he got called up early in the year because he was hitting like 500 on balls in play, and that has come down. And he's still overall been valuable, but he needs to get a hold of the strikeouts. His strikeout rate in June is actually higher than it was in May. So you know, it's a problem, but we'll find out.
All right, one more from me on what we got to find out, and that is, can JJ Picollo engineer a trade? And by that I don't mean answer the phone, sift through the offers, and take a guy. I mean, I think we need to find out, and we may not find this out. Well, it's obviously going to have to come at the trade deadline. Then we wait till the offseason. If it doesn't happen, I would really like to feel good that we get reports that not only do the Royals make a deal, that one, it's not just one of their players for whatever they get, right? It's multiple of their players. Because I find it hard to believe that a team would call and say, we want these two guys, and here's a bunch of guys, that will give you for it. I want to see them put together a deal that looks complicated, looks like the Royals had to swap ideas back and forth, and that they got something that they wanted, not took the best of whatever chum was thrown out of the boat, right, Adam. But they engineered, we want this guy, and they went and got him. The Rays did that with Rany Jazayerli. It happens in baseball. I really don't want to hear, well, no one's calling us, which Jeff Passan said plenty of people are calling them. That's not the case. Okay, great. But I would even like them to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, listen, I'm looking at it. You look like you need this. Well, yeah, we do. I've got this and this that can solve that for you. I want this. I want to get some reports and feel like that JJ Picollo has a plan, has targets, and is able to accomplish acquiring those targets.
100%. And I am nervous about this for a variety of reasons. But the first thing I'll say is I want to see the Royals make something other than the obvious trade, right? Like, yes, they're going to trade Aroldis Chapman, assuming he doesn't get hurt before they get the chance or whatever. At this point, I think I would be very disappointed if they don't trade Scott Barlow, right? I'm not going to give them credit for trading Scott Barlow. But you've got to do more than just trade the relievers approaching free agency, which has basically been the Royals' MO for the last 15 years. Like there are, like you said, there are creative possibilities out there to make other trades, and making a trade for a guy that you actually want, and not instead of just trading making a trade to get rid of a guy that you don't want, it would be a good sign. My fear is that the Royals kind of made this trade last year, and it's one of my most embarrassing pieces of analysis I think on this show since we started it, because I actually didn't kill them for it, and I should have, but I figured it was such a weird trade that I figured they had to have a good idea for making it. And I'm referring to the trade of Emmanuel Rivera for Luke Weaver that you might recall.
Yes.
Where they traded the former 19th round draft pick who had worked his way through the minor leagues, made it to the majors, and then not embarrassed himself for a pitcher who was a year and a half until free agency, who was struggling in Arizona. And we thought, well, there's something about Luke Weaver that they must really like, because maybe he fits their new profile. Nope, Luke Weaver was terrible. They released him. They didn't even give him tender him a contract for this year. He's in Cincinnati and actually been in their rotation, and probably been pitched better there than he would have if he stayed here. And Emmanuel Rivera, since getting to Arizona, has a 105 OPS plus and good defense, and has actually been worth 1.2 wins above replacement in 80 games. Like I still don't know if Emmanuel Rivera is an everyday guy, but like he's got 5 years of club control, and they just threw him away for a pitcher that they gave up on 3 months later.
Is he better than Hunter Dozier?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he is. No question. Like he has been better basically since the day he got to the major leagues, defensively and offensively. And he's hitting right now 314. He's actually been in a bit of a slump, but he's still hitting 314 on the season, 338 OBP, 407 slug. Again, this is not one of those trades that you're going to be up keep you up at night regretting. This is not Jeff Bagwell for Larry Anderson, but it's the thought process. You traded a guy right after you had spent 5 years, 6 years developing him, right at the cusp of him being a major leaguer, for I guess an arm that you thought you could fix, and you couldn't, and you gave up on the guy you thought you could fix like 3 months later. It's a bad look, because that's exactly the kind of trade you're talking about. And it's like, so if they go out and make a trade, it's like, well, I don't know why they wanted this guy, but they must have really wanted him. Unfortunately, now we have a track record of, well, they've done that before, and it's not clear why they wanted that guy any more now than it was a year ago. But in general, they need to be more transactional, and that is one of the few things that we can really rate JJ on between now and the trading deadline is not the quality of the trades, because we'll have to see if they work out, but just simply the quantity and the variety of trades. Because if he only makes the trades of Barlow and Chapman, what is it that he did that Dayton Moore wouldn't have done as well?
Yeah. All right. Anything to wrap us up on this subject?
On this subject of things that I want to find out about, I would throw, it's not a strikeout issue specifically, but I also want to see Michael Massey, get him back. The Royals have a lot of guys like this that are just kind of on the cusp of, if he's 10% better, he could be an everyday player. If he's 10% worse, he shouldn't be in the majors at all. We need to get some clarity on these guys, because some of them are not going to work out. But if we can find out even one or two solutions, this is going to be a long project. So, every solution, there's 26 roster spots. If you can figure out 7 or 8 of them now, that's 7 or 8 fewer to do for next year, and so on and so forth. So I do hope Michael Massey gets back soon, and then we find out what we're dealing with him.
All right. Do you want to wrap us up with a minor league minute?
Yeah, let's finish up with the guys I wanted to talk about. Last week we got a little sidetracked, but I just wanted to bring up, because we're talking about trading Chapman, trading Barlow, and you're thinking, well, gee, we need a bullpen. The Royals have a number of interesting relievers, and when I talked about the pitcher development and how they are emphasizing strikeout pitches more with the high fastball, there's a couple of guys I want to bring up, and we're going to go back to that infamous, shortened, ill-fated 2020 draft, the Asa Lacy draft. Maybe Asa Lacy one day will put his name in onto the list of relievers that came out of that draft. That's the best we can hope for at this point. But we'll start with the 4th round pick.
By the way, when you say that's the best we can hope for, you know what always rings in my head when people say that is the line from is it The Gambler from Kenny Rogers' song? The best that you can hope for is to die in your sleep. Like, that always rings in my head. For some reason at this time,
not morbid at all.
Appropriate. Yeah, no, very morbid. Anyway, go ahead.
So the Royals' 4th round pick that year, Christian Chamberlain, is a short lefty, 5'10" lefty out of Oregon State, I believe. But just tremendous stuff from a small package. Last year, like a lot of guys in this organization, had a lot of control issues, walked 47 dudes in 49 innings. But this year went to Double-A, and the stuff was playing up even more. Like, the emphasis on strikeouts has really paid off. He had 49 strikeouts in 32 innings. His strikeout rate was about 35%. You want your relievers to be above 30. 35% is excellent. Just got called up to AAA Omaha. It's only been 2 2/3 innings. He's given up 3 runs. He's still walking too many guys. In 34 innings this year, 54 Ks, 25 walks. But especially for a guy who's a lefty, this is one of those guys where if he can get his command under control, the stuff is already major league caliber. In the 5th round, remember there was only a 5-round draft that year. So with the Royals' last pick, they took Will Klein, who was a college pitcher from Eastern Illinois, right-hander. And in 2021, he was one of the breakout guys in the minor leagues. 121 strikeouts in 70 innings in A-ball. Last year, he had shin splints, which is what they're blaming his disaster of a season where he had a 10.5 ERA in Double-A.
Right.
So if that's hopefully it was the shin splints, but then it begs the question: why the hell were they letting him pitch with shin splints so bad that he had a 10.5 in ERA? Probably for the same reason that they let Asa Lacy go to Double-A when he couldn't throw strikes in rookie ball. The denial in this organization can be strong at times.
Yes.
But he went back to Double-A this year. He's healthy, and his walk rate has come down. His strikeouts went up. He had 44 strikeouts in 29 innings. He's just got promoted to Omaha last week as well. And he's in 19 batters in Omaha. He struck out 9 of them already. He's also walked 17 batters in 33 innings. His walk rate is still too high, but the stuff is playing up really big time.
Can I just tell you that when I hear the minor league minute, I say, see my previous point. Nobody gets advanced without throwing strikes. Every single guy you mentioned.
I agree. This is why
He's
this is
throwing
not.
strikes.
This is not. I didn't say this is the positive minor league minute. It's
No,
just
no,
the
I
minor
know.
league minute.
I know.
No.
I'm saying, let me add on to Randy's point.
Absolutely.
This
When the
is what
Royals
I'm
talked
talking
about raid the zone, right? That was our minor league our spring trading motto, raid the zone, right? The Royals are 25th in baseball in walks allowed this year. And that's probably an improvement over where they were a few weeks ago. So yes, it's a problem, and maybe they should be not promoting these guys until they throw more strikes. I'll give relievers a little bit more of leeway, but that's a lot of leeway because these guys are still walking 6-7 guys per 9 innings. You've got to bring it down at least under one walk every other inning. The stuff is there. The strikeouts are there, but yes, the Royals need more strikeouts, but more importantly, fewer walks from these guys. And then finally, the other guy who wasn't technically in that draft, but that was the year because the draft ended after 5 rounds. You could only sign guys after that for, I think, $20,000 maximum. And the Royals cleaned up in that because the Royals did such a good job of taking care of their minor leaguers during the pandemic and paying all their players. So a lot of college guys wanted to sign with the organization. There were a lot of feel-good vibes. They signed a whole bunch of dudes who would have been 6th, 7th, 8th round draft picks out of college, but which was a great thing. But like, none of those guys have made it to the major leagues yet. There have been a few in other organizations who have. None of the Royals guys have. But if there's one guy who might come out of that as a feel-good story for the Royals, it's John McMillan, who was a very hard-throwing, similar to Will Klein, very hard-throwing right-hander, but who had some major control issues. Last year, 31 innings, 38 walks. That's bad. That's very bad. This year, though, went back down to low A ball and struck out 21 of 43 batters, a 50% strikeout rate, got promoted to high A ball, struck out 40 batters in 77 innings, or sorry, 40 batters out of 77 batters, and recently got promoted to double A, and only 4 out of 15 strikeouts. But for the year, he's basically got a 48% strikeout rate. That's like peak Aroldis Chapman, peak Craig Kimbrell territory, and only 15 walks in 34 innings. Like, he actually, on just a pure per inning basis, has probably been the most effective pitcher in the organization this year. Still too many walks. Better than the other guys. The point is, there are guys here, but the Royals have to figure out how to teach hard throwers to throw strikes. If they can do that, the raw materials are here. Out of those 3 guys, if 1 or 2 of them turn into major league relievers, that'll replace the guys that you're giving up. They don't lack for bullpen talent. Let's put it that way.
I think instead of raid the zone, the T-shirt should say something to the effect of
afraid of the zone.
Make future dinner reservations around the zone. Right? Like, we intend to arrive at the zone at some point. We're not ready to raid it. We're not going to come storming out of, assault vehicles ready to raid the zone. The zone is there. We'll dine somewhere near it at a future date. We'll look at it. We'll consider it at that time. Please consider Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Remember, they're hiring right now. One of Kansas City's best companies, biggest, fastest growing companies is Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Hiring for all positions, up to $30 per hour based upon your experience. Paid time off, insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Make sure you tell them you heard about him here on the Kaufman Corner. And make sure you join us next week where we will break down the draft with Baseball America's J.J. Cooper. For the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro, saying thank you very much for joining